Hi muffins! Thank you guys for tuning in. I have a little recipe for you guys. It's a vegan donut recipe. I'm pretty excited because each donut is only 2 Smartpoints. If you leave off the icing, and then if you add the icing, it's only 1 Smartpoint. These are completely vegan and delicious. If you don't have a donut pan, then just make them into little muffins. I would just portion them out to where it's a serving of 6 because that's what the points is for. I also think this is pretty adaptable. I think in my next recipe that I do, instead of using applesauce, I'm going to try pumpkin and try and get some of them fall flavors going. So if you want to see how I made delicious vegan donuts, stay tuned. So here's all the ingredients you're going to need. You're going to need some salt. You're going to need some cinnamon. These are just the seasonings you're going to need for the spices. So that's the only 2 you need for that. Then we're going to need some apple cider vinegar. I like this one from Bragg's because it has the mother inside of it. Then you're going to need some baking powder. Any baking powder will do. And I'll put all the totals of what you need down below, and then also the recipe in the down bar. You're going to need some sugar-free syrup. You're going to need some vanilla. This is my homemade vanilla, but you can use any vanilla that you have. You're going to need some unsweetened applesauce. The recipe actually calls for oil, but I'm going to use unsweetened applesauce instead of oil, so that way I can have less calories up in there. Then you're going to need your non-dairy milk of choice. I'm going to use unsweetened vanilla almond milk. And you need flour. You don't need this much flour, but you need flour. So we are going to set our oven to 350 and let that preheat while we're mixing it up. Now I just happen to have a donut pan on hand because if you've been with my channel for a while, you know that I am a donut-aholic. So I just happen to have a donut pan. You can usually find these at like TJ Maxx for super cheap. I think that's where I got this one. But it's by Wilton, so you can also get them at like Michael's in the cake department. But if not, you can just use these. I would do them in muffin pans maybe and just fill each muffin tin halfway up or until you get 6 servings because that's how many the recipe is for. So I am actually going to weigh out my flour just because when it comes to baking it's a little bit better. So you're gonna need 125 grams or 1 cup of flour, and you can use whole wheat flour as well, or you can use spelt. This is just what I had, so I'm not gonna go buy special flour. So there's 128 grams of flour, and we're just gonna put that in our mixing bowl. You're gonna need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Now the recipe says 1/4 teaspoon of salt, but I'm just gonna do a little pinch of pink sea salt just because I'm all about that don't measure stuff life. And then it says to put in some cinnamon, so I'm just putting it in there because I like cinnamon. So I'm just gonna whisk this up, all of our dry ingredients, so they are incorporated, and I sound like I know what I'm talking about. So for wet ingredients, I'm gonna do 1/4 cup, make a little well. I'm gonna do 1/4 cup of almond milk. We're gonna do 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and you want to make sure you throw it all over the place, but you want to make sure you shake it up so you get that mother all up in it. So 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. This calls for 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla, but again I'm just gonna eyeball it because you can never have too much vanilla in my opinion. I put in probably more like a teaspoon. Now we're going to do 1/3 cup of sugar-free syrup. If you don't want to do sugar-free, you're making this just for like a Whole Foods sort of deal, you can use 100% pure maple syrup. 1/3 cup. And it also says you can use agave or honey, but again, that's going to add points and calories. So the recipe calls for 3½ tablespoons of oil of your choice. If I was not on a diet, I would do coconut oil because coconut oil tastes amazing in baked goods, but since we are, I'm going to use this unsweetened applesauce. It says 3½ tablespoons, but I'm just going to do 4 tablespoons so that it's extra moist. And so now we're just going to mix this up. Now I'm going to taste the batter because I always lick the bowl, so I want to see if it tastes good. It's actually really sweet and delicious. So now I'm actually going to take this batter and spoon it into a gallon-sized baggie just so I can cut the tip of it and use it like a piping bag. Just because I want to be able to get into these grooves easily without making a huge mess. And before I do that, before I do all that, I'm going to spray this pan down with some coconut oil spray. The best thing about vegan baking is you don't have to worry about getting listeria. So now I've got it in the baggie. I'm just gonna cut the tip off so I can squeeze it out. I feel like there's a "that's what she said" joke somewhere in there. And now I'm just gonna pipe it into my pan. Okay, so now we've got our donuts in the pan. So now I'm just gonna take some frozen blueberries. These are mixed with blackberries because they're from our garden, but I'm just gonna pick some out and I'm gonna squish them into the batter. This way they don't get squished in stirring while you're making the batter. And also it just kind of makes them retain their shape and they won't dye your stuff. So here's our finished product. I'm gonna leave these two plain just because I want to see what they taste like plain. But then these are the ones with the blueberries. So I'm gonna pop these in the oven. It says for 15 minutes, I think, and then we'll give it a check. So I just pulled these out of the oven. They did take around 15 minutes, but again, everyone's oven is different, so do you, girl. I couldn't really tell, I guess because they're vegan, and they didn't get brown like on this side, so I couldn't really tell if they were done, so I just sort of followed my nose. And you can kind of see in there a little bit that they are brown on the other side. So just keep that in mind when you're cooking them, to just keep checking them in the event that you think that they're not done, but then you overdo it. So anyway, I'm gonna let these cool before I put the icing on, and then we'll see where we are. So I'm also going to whip up a quick little glaze slash icing for these donuts. You don't have to put it on there. It does add 1 point to the finished donut. So you can totally leave it off if you want, but I just thought for fancy Instagram picture purposes, it should have a glaze. So I'm just going to use some confectioner's sugar and some unsweetened, the same almond milk that I used for inside of the donuts. Speaking. I'm just going to do 2 tablespoons of sugar. This is a 2 tablespoon measuring spoon, that's why it's just one of those. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of almond milk, a little bit at a time until it's glazy-like. Now you can use any milk you want. You can use coconut milk, whatever. The small amount that you need is not going to add any points to the glaze. You just want to make sure you get all the chunks out, so if there's any chunks in there, just break them up. So as you can see, it's getting glazy-like. It's a little bit thick, but definitely drippy enough to drip. And so I'm going to put this in a baggie just like I did with our batter. Times like these, I'm glad I'm obsessed with tiny kitchen apparatuses, but I'm just going to scoop this into a baggie. So now that I have a baggie of glaze, I'm just going to stick this in the fridge while we're waiting for our donuts to get done, just so it'll thicken up even more and be easier to squeeze out. You may be asking yourself why there's only 5 donuts. It's because I ate one. So these are completely cooled. Now I'm just going to use our little baggie of icing, and I'm just going to do just like I did with the batter and just drizzle it on there. There they are with the drizzle on top. I'm just going to let these hang out for a bit and then I'm going to eat one. With the icing it's 3 points, without the icing it's 1 point.